Sometimes the universe doesn't ask permission before tying two lives together. The storm had started 3 hours earlier, rolling across the frozen plains of Kepler Station like a wall of white fire. Dr. Ethan Carter watched it through the reinforced glass of the outpost infirmary as static flickered across the medical monitors beside him. Outside, winds screamed across the ice fields at nearly 90 miles per hour, strong enough to sandblast steel and bury vehicles under drifting snow in minutes. Nights like this reminded Ethan how far he was from Earth. The nearest human city was over 400 miles away, and Kepler Station was little more than a mining outpost and a small medical bay bolted to the side of a ridge of frozen rock. Most days were quiet. Broken wrists, frostbite, the occasional mining accident. Nothing heroic. Nothing dramatic. Ethan preferred it that way. He had come here because he believed medicine was simple at its core. If someone was hurt, you helped them. If someone was dying, you tried to stop it. No speeches. No glory. Just the quiet responsibility of keeping another heartbeat alive. The alarm shattered the silence. A sharp electronic chime pulsed from the radar console in the corner of the room. Ethan turned, expecting another storm warning, but the screen showed something different. A heat signature. Small. Irregular. Falling fast through the upper atmosphere. For a moment he assumed it was debris from an orbital satellite. Then the object slowed. Adjusted course. And crashed somewhere beyond the ridge less than 2 miles away. The signal vanished. Ethan stared at the monitor, feeling a strange tightness in his chest. Nothing survived a fall like that. Still, he grabbed his thermal jacket, emergency kit, and portable scanner before stepping into the howling wind. The storm fought him every step of the way. Snow hammered his visor while the headlights of the crawler cut a narrow tunnel through the darkness. 10 minutes later he saw the impact site. The snow around it had melted into glassy ice. At the center of the crater lay something that did not belong on any human world. A vessel, sleek and curved like liquid metal, half buried beneath frost. One hatch hung open. Ethan approached carefully, boots crunching against frozen ground. His scanner flickered to life the moment he stepped inside the shattered doorway. A heartbeat appeared on the screen. Weak. Slow. But unmistakably alive. The interior glowed with dim blue light and strange symbols Ethan couldn't read. And there, lying across the fractured floor panels, was the source of the signal. A woman. Or something close to one. Tall. Slender. Skin the color of deep ocean blue, faintly luminous in the dark. Her breathing was shallow, barely moving her chest. Ethan knelt beside her, running the scanner again. The device struggled to interpret her biology, but one message flashed clearly across the display. Critical system failure. Neural stability collapsing. Host connection required. Ethan frowned. He had no idea what that meant. But he did understand the final number blinking beside her life signs. 12 minutes. He exhaled slowly and opened his medical kit. All right, he said quietly, more to himself than to her. Let's see if human medicine works out here too. Dr. Ethan Carter had learned long ago that medicine often meant making decisions before fear had time to speak. The alien woman's breathing remained faint as the cold air of the shattered vessel drifted through the broken hull. Frost crawled slowly along the curved metal walls while the storm outside howled like a living thing across the frozen valley. Ethan placed his scanner against the side of her neck again. The numbers flickered uncertainly. Her pulse was unstable, slower than any human heart could survive. The screen displayed lines of alien characters that meant nothing to him except for the one section his device had managed to translate. Neural stability collapsing. Host connection required. Ethan exhaled slowly through the mask of his thermal hood. 12 minutes had already fallen to 9. The logical choice would have been to call the station and wait for a proper research team. But Ethan had spent enough years in emergency rooms to understand something important. When a patient was dying, waiting was simply another way of giving up. He opened his portable medical case and activated the universal diagnostic probe. The thin metal arm extended carefully toward her chest while the scanner attempted to map her internal systems. The results scrolled across the small screen in chaotic layers of unknown biology. Her organs were arranged differently from anything human science had catalogued. Her bloodstream glowed faintly beneath her skin, carrying microscopic structures that looked less like cells and more like tiny machines. Ethan frowned as the scanner attempted a translation. Artificial. Biological interface detected. Neural network unstable. Emergency bond protocol pending. He paused. Bond protocol. The phrase sounded less like a medical treatment and more like a machine waiting for instructions. A faint pulse of blue light suddenly moved beneath the alien woman's skin, spreading outward like ripples through water. Ethan leaned closer. The scanner beeped again. Warning. Host not connected. Neural collapse in 6 minutes. Ethan rubbed a hand across his forehead. Snow blew through the broken doorway behind him, dusting the floor in a thin layer of ice crystals. The storm was getting worse, and the temperature inside the vessel had already dropped below 20 degrees Fahrenheit. If he left her here, the cold alone would finish what the crash had started. He studied the strange device embedded along the inside of her forearm. It looked almost organic, smooth and silver, with faint lines of light running beneath the surface like glowing veins. The scanner hovered uncertainly above it, then displayed a simple instruction in English as if the alien system had decided to communicate in the most direct way possible. Compatible neural host required to stabilize life functions. Ethan stared at the message. Host. The word made his stomach tighten. He was a doctor, not part of whatever biological machine this was. But the monitor beside the message displayed the same fading pulse he had seen 1,000 times in emergency rooms back on Earth. A life slipping quietly toward silence. 5 minutes. Ethan swallowed and looked down at the alien woman again. Up close her features were calmer than he expected. Not threatening. Just unfamiliar. Snowflakes drifted across her blue skin, melting instantly from the faint warmth still left in her body. He remembered the first promise he made the day he graduated from medical school. If someone needed help and he was the only one there, he would try. Even if the patient was not human. Even if the medicine was not human either. Ethan placed his gloved hand gently against the glowing device on her arm. The metal felt warm despite the freezing air. All right, he said quietly into the dim blue light of the broken ship. Let us find out what your system thinks a host is supposed to do. The metal beneath Ethan Carter's hand pulsed once, soft and warm like a heartbeat hidden inside machinery. For a moment nothing happened. The storm howled through the broken hull of the alien vessel and snow drifted slowly across the glowing floor panels. Ethan almost pulled his hand away, convinced that the translation on his scanner had been wrong. Then the device reacted. A thin line of blue light spread from the smooth surface beneath his palm, moving across his glove like liquid electricity searching for contact. The scanner in his other hand erupted with warning signals. Foreign neural interface detected. Biological synchronization initiating. Ethan's breath caught in his throat. The glove material between his skin and the alien device began to vibrate faintly, as if the machine was testing the barrier between them. He hesitated for 1 second longer, then removed the glove. Cold air immediately bit into his fingers as he pressed his bare hand back onto the device. The response was instant. The blue light brightened and spread across his palm in branching lines that felt strangely warm rather than painful. Ethan watched in stunned silence as the scanner screen changed again. Host compatibility confirmed. Emergency bond protocol engaged. Somewhere deep inside the alien ship a low hum awakened, subtle but steady, like a system coming back to life after a long sleep. The woman on the floor inhaled sharply for the first time since Ethan had found her. The breath was shallow but unmistakably stronger than before. Ethan glanced at the scanner again. Her heart rate climbed slowly, from barely measurable to something steadier. Still weak. But no longer fading. Then Ethan felt something he could not explain. A pressure behind his eyes. Not pain. Not dizziness. Something else. Like standing too close to a loudspeaker where the vibration travels through bone instead of air. The blue lines of light moved farther across his skin, disappearing beneath his sleeve before fading completely. The device beneath his hand dimmed, satisfied. Bond stabilization in progress, the scanner translated calmly. Ethan swallowed and slowly removed his hand. The strange pressure in his head remained for a few seconds longer before fading into a quiet stillness. He checked the alien woman again. Her breathing had deepened slightly. The faint glow beneath her blue skin moved in slow rhythmic waves, almost synchronized with Ethan's own pulse. He frowned and placed 2 fingers against his neck. His heartbeat felt normal. But when he glanced back at the scanner, the display showed something unexpected. 2 separate biological patterns had appeared on the screen. The alien woman's life signs on one side. His own on the other. Between them a thin line pulsed back and forth, linking both readings together. Ethan leaned closer to the monitor. The device translated another line of alien text. Neural pathways synchronized. Host and subject life support interdependent. Ethan stared at the words for several seconds. Interdependent. The meaning settled slowly in his mind. He looked down at the unconscious alien woman again. Snow continued to drift through the broken hatch while the distant storm roared across the frozen valley outside. For the first time since arriving, Ethan noticed something else in the silence of the ruined vessel. The hum of the ship's systems had grown steadier, responding to the bond that had just formed. The alien woman stirred faintly against the cold floor panels. Her eyes did not open yet, but her breathing strengthened again, as if the connection had given her body permission to keep fighting. Ethan let out a long breath he did not realize he had been holding. "Well," he murmured quietly in the dim blue light. "I guess we are both part of the treatment now." Dr. Ethan Carter did not notice the moment the bond became real until the silence inside the broken vessel changed. At first it was only a subtle difference in the air, like the quiet hum of a machine that had finally found the correct rhythm. The alien woman's breathing continued to strengthen as the faint blue glow beneath her skin pulsed slowly. Ethan checked the scanner again and watched both life signs move across the screen in steady patterns. Her heartbeat was still weaker than a human's, but it was no longer collapsing. And strangely, the thin line linking their biological readings continued to pulse between them like a shared signal. Ethan had seen unusual medical technology before, but nothing like this. He gently adjusted the thermal blanket from his medical kit around her shoulders to protect her from the freezing air drifting through the open hatch. The temperature inside the wreck had fallen close to 15 degrees Fahrenheit. Under normal circumstances she would not survive long in conditions like this, yet the scanner showed her internal systems stabilizing more with every passing minute. Then something unexpected happened. The pressure behind Ethan's eyes returned, stronger than before. He placed one hand against the wall of the vessel to steady himself as the sensation spread through his thoughts like a ripple across water. It was not painful. It felt more like a distant echo of emotion. Confusion. Disorientation. A faint wave of awareness that did not belong entirely to him. Ethan slowly looked down at the unconscious alien woman again. Her eyelids trembled slightly as if she were struggling to wake. The scanner translated another line of alien text across the display. Neural bridge stabilizing. Sensory synchronization beginning. Ethan stared at the message. Sensory synchronization. Before he could fully process the meaning, the woman inhaled sharply and her eyes opened. They were brighter than he expected, a deep silver color that reflected the dim blue light of the vessel like polished metal. For several seconds she did not move. She simply stared upward at the ceiling as if trying to remember where she was. Then her gaze shifted toward Ethan. The moment their eyes met, the strange pressure inside his head surged again. This time it carried something clearer than before. Alarm. Confusion. A sharp flash of defensive awareness that raced through his thoughts before fading again. Ethan raised both hands slowly, keeping his voice calm. "Easy," he said gently. "You were in a crash. I am a doctor." The alien woman did not answer immediately. Her breathing grew deeper as she studied him, her silver eyes moving across his face with intense focus. Ethan realized she was not only looking at him. She was feeling something through the bond that now linked them. After a long moment she lifted her hand weakly and looked at the device embedded along her forearm. The metal surface was dim now, its earlier glow replaced by a faint steady pulse. Her gaze shifted back to Ethan again, sharper this time. When she spoke her voice was quiet but clear, carrying an unfamiliar accent shaped by a language older than anything on Earth. "You, connected." The pressure inside Ethan's mind flared again, not painful but unmistakably emotional. Shock. Realization. And something deeper beneath it. He nodded slowly. "Your system said you needed a host to survive," he replied. "I did what I could." The alien woman remained silent for several seconds. Outside the storm continued to roar across the frozen valley while snow drifted slowly through the open hatch behind them. Finally she closed her eyes briefly. And released a slow breath. When she opened them again, the confusion had been replaced by something more controlled. "Human doctor," she said quietly. "You may not understand what you have done." The alien woman's words lingered in the cold air between them while the distant storm continued to roar across the frozen valley. Dr. Ethan Carter studied her carefully, watching the way her silver eyes focused on him with a clarity that had not been there moments earlier. Whatever strength the bond had given her was real. The scanner resting on the floor beside him confirmed it. Her vital signs were stabilizing, and the thin glowing line that linked their biological readings pulsed steadily with every heartbeat. Ethan slowly exhaled. "You are alive," he said calmly. "That is what matters right now." The woman watched him for several seconds without speaking. Then she shifted slightly, testing the strength of her body. The movement was slow, but controlled. The faint blue light beneath her skin brightened briefly as if responding to the effort. When she spoke again, her voice carried more strength. "Your action prevented my neural collapse," she said. "But the connection you activated is not temporary." Ethan raised an eyebrow. "That was not exactly explained by your system." A faint expression passed across her face that Ethan could not fully interpret. It was not anger. It felt closer to disbelief. Through the strange echo in his mind he sensed a flicker of her thoughts again, brief and controlled but unmistakable. Calculation. Concern. And something deeper that resembled reluctant respect. She slowly sat upright, bracing one hand against the curved wall of the damaged vessel. The movement made Ethan feel a strange ripple inside his chest, as if his body briefly mirrored the effort of hers. He noticed it immediately. "That is new," he muttered. The alien woman noticed as well. Her silver eyes narrowed slightly. "You feel it," she said quietly. Ethan nodded once. "I think so." She lifted her arm and studied the device embedded in her forearm again. The faint glow within it pulsed calmly now, synchronized with both of their heartbeats. "The bond creates a shared neural bridge," she explained. "Your nervous system now stabilizes mine. In return my systems have synchronized with yours." Ethan looked down at the scanner again, confirming the strange pattern linking their life signs. "Meaning if something happens to one of us," he said slowly, "the other feels it." The alien woman met his gaze again. "More than feel it." The silence that followed carried a different weight now. The wind outside continued to scream across the frozen landscape, rattling the fractured hull of the ship. Snow drifted gently across the floor like pale dust. Ethan rubbed the back of his neck as he processed the situation. That sounds less like medical treatment and more like a permanent partnership, he said. A faint flicker of emotion crossed her expression again. Through the echo inside his thoughts he sensed the same reaction from her side. Agreement. Reluctance. And a strange curiosity about the human standing in front of her. Among my people, she said carefully, this bond is not given lightly. Ethan gave a small, tired smile. Trust me. It was not exactly scheduled on my calendar either. For the first time the alien woman's expression softened slightly. The tension in her shoulders eased as she studied him again, perhaps realizing something important through the connection between them. After a moment she spoke once more. Human doctor, she said quietly. My name is Lyra Vale. The name settled into Ethan Carter's thoughts with an unexpected clarity, as if the bond between them carried more than simple sound. Lyra Vale. Even before she finished speaking he felt a faint echo of meaning behind the words, a quiet sense of identity and history that did not belong to him. He blinked once and steadied himself against the wall of the damaged vessel while the strange sensation faded again. Snow continued to drift through the open hatch, swirling in the dim blue light of the alien systems that had begun to stabilize around them. Ethan nodded slowly. Ethan Carter, he replied. Doctor at Kepler Station. Lyra studied him carefully, her silver eyes sharp and thoughtful as if measuring the truth of his words through the connection they now shared. The faint glow beneath her skin pulsed again, synchronized with the steady rhythm of his own heartbeat. After a moment she lowered her gaze toward the scanner resting near his knee. Your equipment is primitive, she said calmly. Ethan gave a quiet laugh despite the cold air filling the wreck. That is a polite way of saying human technology is behind yours. It kept me alive, she answered. That gives it value. For several seconds. Neither of them spoke. The silence felt different now, no longer tense but filled with a strange awareness. Ethan realized he could sense small shifts in Lyra's emotions through the bond, like distant weather moving across a horizon. Not clear thoughts. Just impressions. Curiosity. Careful observation. A cautious acceptance of the situation they now shared. Lyra slowly pushed herself to her feet. The movement was steadier than Ethan expected from someone who had nearly died minutes earlier. Still, she paused once the room tilted slightly and placed one hand against the curved wall. Ethan instinctively stepped forward to support her. The moment his hand touched her arm another brief ripple passed through the connection between them. Not pain. Something closer to shared balance, as if their bodies were adjusting to the new rhythm linking their nervous systems. Lyra noticed it too. Her expression changed slightly, thoughtful rather than alarmed. The bond is stabilizing, she said quietly. Ethan looked toward the broken hatch where the storm outside continued to roar across the frozen plains. The wind had grown louder, rattling loose pieces of metal along the edges of the wreck. We cannot stay here, he said. My station is about 2 miles from this ridge. It has heat, medical equipment, and a roof that actually works. Lyra turned toward the opening and studied the swirling snow beyond it. For a moment Ethan felt something through the bond again. Calculation. Strategy. The instinct of someone used to dangerous situations. Your environment is hostile, she said. But your shelter increases survival probability. Ethan smiled slightly. That is the most scientific way anyone has ever accepted an invitation to my clinic. Lyra glanced back at him, and for the first time there was the faintest hint of humor behind the calm control of her expression. Human doctor, she said quietly, our survival is now mathematically linked. Ethan picked up the scanner and medical kit from the floor while the distant thunder of the storm echoed across the frozen valley. As he stepped toward the hatch he felt the subtle pull of the bond again, a quiet reminder that he was no longer walking alone. Lyra Vale followed him into the white storm, and somewhere deep in Ethan's thoughts he felt the same realization forming in her mind at the exact same moment. 2 separate lives had just become one shared equation. The storm swallowed them the moment they stepped outside the broken vessel. Wind slammed across the frozen ridge with the force of a moving wall, carrying needles of ice that rattled against Ethan Carter's visor and coat. Visibility dropped to barely 30 feet as white snow spiraled through the darkness. Ethan leaned forward into the wind and motioned for Lyra to follow closely beside him. Even through the thick layers of his thermal jacket he could feel the strange connection between them, a quiet awareness that tracked her movements just behind his shoulder. Lyra adapted quickly to the brutal environment. Her stride became steady as she matched Ethan's pace across the uneven ground, though he could sense the strain through the bond each time the wind pushed against her recovering body. The crash had drained much of her strength, and the freezing air did not help. Still she kept moving with the calm focus of someone trained to endure hostile terrain. After several minutes Ethan noticed something unexpected. Whenever he adjusted his direction through the snow, Lyra reacted almost before he spoke. At first he assumed she was simply following his footprints, but then he felt the explanation through the connection itself. The bond was carrying faint signals between their nervous systems. Not full thoughts, but instincts. Balance. Direction. Intention. It was like sharing the same rhythm during a difficult climb. Lyra slowed briefly beside him as they reached the edge of the ridge. Below them the distant lights of Kepler station flickered faintly through the storm nearly 2 miles away. The outpost buildings looked small against the endless white plains, but the warm yellow glow of the generator towers promised shelter. Ethan pointed through the snow. "That is home base," he said loudly over the wind. Lyra studied the distant lights, her silver eyes narrowing slightly. Through the bond Ethan felt a surge of quiet relief from her side, quickly hidden behind disciplined control. "Your shelter is stable," she said. "Good. I would prefer not to collapse in the snow." Ethan gave a short laugh. "That makes 2 of us." They continued down the slope together, moving slowly but steadily toward the station. The storm roared around them, but the shared rhythm between their bodies made the climb feel strangely easier. Whenever Ethan slipped slightly on the ice he felt Lyra adjust her pace instinctively, and when Lyra's steps grew heavier Ethan sensed the fatigue through the bond before she even spoke. The connection was becoming more natural with every minute they walked. Halfway down the ridge Ethan suddenly paused. Something had shifted in the quiet background awareness he felt from Lyra. A ripple of concern moved through the bond like a shadow crossing sunlight. He turned toward her. "What is it?" Lyra had stopped as well, her gaze lifting toward the storm-filled sky above them. The wind howled across the ridge but her expression had sharpened with sudden focus. Ethan followed her gaze but saw nothing except swirling clouds and falling snow. Yet the unease within the bond remained, steady and unmistakable. Lyra spoke slowly, her voice calm but serious. "Before my vessel crashed," she said, "it was being pursued." Ethan felt the meaning settle heavily in his thoughts. The storm continued to rage around them while the distant lights of Kepler station flickered in the frozen darkness. Then Lyra looked back at him, and through the bond he felt the quiet certainty behind her next words. "Those who chased me will search for the wreck." The wind howled louder as Ethan Carter and Lyra Vale continued down the frozen slope toward the distant lights of Kepler station. Snow swirled around them in thick white waves, turning the landscape into a shifting blur of ice and shadow. Ethan kept moving, but Lyra's words echoed heavily in his thoughts. "Those who chased me will search for the wreck." He glanced sideways at her through the storm. "How soon would they arrive?" he asked. Lyra walked beside him with controlled steps, her gaze still scanning the sky even through the heavy clouds and blowing snow. Through the bond Ethan felt the quiet calculation forming in her mind again. It was the same instinct he had sensed earlier inside the broken vessel. Strategic. Measured. The thinking of someone who had lived with danger for a long time. "If they track my vessel before atmospheric entry," she said calmly, "they will know this region." Ethan felt a subtle shift of tension ripple through the bond. Not fear. Something colder. Expectation. "Then they will follow the crash signal," Ethan said. Lyra nodded once. Yes. The station lights ahead of them flickered brighter as they descended farther into the valley. Ethan could already see the tall metal towers that surrounded the outpost perimeter. Their red warning beacons blinked steadily through the storm like distant stars. Warm air. Power. Walls strong enough to keep the wind outside. The thought alone pushed him to keep moving. Yet the uneasy awareness in the bond had not faded. If Lyra's pursuers reached the wreck, they would begin searching the surrounding area. And Kepler Station was the only human settlement within hundreds of miles. Ethan slowed slightly as the realization settled in his mind. Through the connection he felt Lyra noticed the same thought forming in him at the exact same moment. She spoke quietly beside him. Your shelter will become part of this situation. Ethan nodded, though the motion was small against the wind. It already is, he said. For a moment they walked in silence again, the storm roaring across the endless frozen plains. Ethan adjusted the strap of his medical kit across his shoulder while he studied the lights of the station growing closer ahead. Through the bond he felt Lyra's attention shift toward him again. Curious. Measuring. As if she was trying to understand a decision he had not spoken yet. Finally she asked the question directly. Human doctor, she said, you understand the risk. Ethan looked forward through the storm. The lights of the outpost were less than half a mile away now. He could almost see the outlines of the main building through the snow. Inside were other humans. Miners. Engineers. Ordinary people who had never asked to be involved in something from another world. The logical choice would be to keep walking past the station. To disappear into the empty ice fields where no one else could be drawn into Lyra's conflict. But Ethan Carter had never been good at walking away from someone who needed help. He glanced toward Lyra and gave a small tired smile that she could feel through the bond before he even spoke. I am a doctor, he said simply. And you are still my patient. Lyra looked at him for several seconds while the wind swept snow across the frozen ground around them. Through the bond Ethan felt something shift inside her thoughts again. Not surprise this time. Recognition. A quiet understanding of the strange moral rule guiding the human walking beside her through the storm. She finally nodded once. Then we continue, she said. And together they walked toward the lights of Kepler Station while somewhere far beyond the storm hidden eyes were already beginning to search the frozen world for the ship that had fallen from the sky. Warm light spilled across the snow as the outer doors of Kepler Station finally came into view through the storm. Dr. Ethan Carter could feel the familiar vibration of the station generators beneath his boots even before they reached the airlock platform. The tall metal walls rose out of the frozen ground like a fortress against the endless white plains, their red warning beacons blinking steadily through the snow. Ethan climbed the last steel steps and slammed his gloved hand against the entry panel. A moment later the outer hatch opened with a heavy mechanical groan, releasing a wave of warm air that rolled across the platform. After hours in the freezing wind the heat felt almost unreal. Ethan stepped inside and motioned for Lyra Vale to follow. The airlock door sealed behind them with a deep metallic thud while heaters hummed to life along the walls. Frost melted instantly from their coats and boots, dripping onto the steel floor. For the first time since leaving the crash site the storm was only a distant roar outside the reinforced doors. Ethan leaned against the wall and removed his visor, drawing a long steady breath. Through the bond he felt Lyra's body react to the warmth as well. Relief moved through her like sunlight reaching frozen ground. Her silver eyes slowly studied the narrow chamber, absorbing every detail with quiet awareness. After a few seconds the inner hatch opened and the main corridor of the station appeared beyond it. Yellow ceiling lights illuminated the metal hallway while the soft rumble of generators filled the background. To Ethan it was an ordinary workplace. To Lyra it was clearly something new. She stepped forward carefully, her gaze moving across the human equipment lining the corridor walls. Ethan picked up his medical kit and started toward the infirmary at the far end of the hall. You are safe here for now, he said. Lyra followed him, though the bond carried a subtle hesitation beneath her calm expression. "Your people do not know what I am," she said quietly. Ethan shrugged slightly. "Most of them barely understand what I do either." That answer sent a faint ripple of amusement through the connection between them. It surprised both of them at the same time. When they reached the infirmary, Ethan opened the door and guided her inside. The room was small but warm, filled with clean white lights and rows of medical monitors. Lyra sat carefully on the examination table while Ethan activated the diagnostic scanner. The device began to hum as it analyzed her condition again. The results appeared quickly on the screen. Neural bond stable. Dual life support synchronized. Ethan nodded with quiet satisfaction. "Looks like the system worked," he said. Lyra studied the glowing monitor beside him. For a moment the room fell silent except for the soft hum of the equipment and the distant wind outside the station walls. Then she spoke in a tone far more serious than before. "My pursuers will eventually reach this world," she said. Ethan leaned against the counter and folded his arms. "Then we will deal with that when it happens." Lyra looked at him with the same careful expression she had worn since the moment she woke inside the wrecked vessel. But this time the bond carried something deeper beneath her calm voice. Understanding. Respect. A quiet recognition of the strange determination that defined the human standing beside her. After a long moment she nodded once. Ethan glanced toward the frost-covered window at the far end of the room where the storm still raged across the endless frozen plains. Somewhere beyond that storm unknown ships might already be searching the darkness for the fallen vessel and the alien who had escaped it. Yet inside the warm light of the small infirmary another truth had already taken shape. 2 lives had been bound together by chance, survival, and a decision made in the middle of a frozen storm.